There comes a moment in every life when the noise grows so loud that it begins to drown out the only voice that has ever truly guided you. The opinions, the expectations, the endless commentary of the world press in on your mind until you forget what it feels like to rest inside your own being. And in that moment, the soul whispers, not in force, not in drama, but in quiet certainty, focus on God, humble yourself, and stay silent. Not silent as an act of fear or withdrawal, but silent as an act of trust. Silent as a return, silent as remembrance. You see, silence is not emptiness. Silence is presence. It is the space where the divine has always been waiting for you to stop arguing with life and start listening to it. When you quiet the constant narration of the ego, when you step away from the need to explain, defend, impress, or control, something ancient and intelligent begins to rise within you. This is not a new force entering your life. It is the original intelligence that has always been there, patiently observing, calmly guiding, never imposing. God does not shout over your thoughts. God waits for you to soften enough to hear. Humility is the doorway. Not the humility that shrinks you or convinces you that you are unworthy, but the humility that releases the illusion that you were ever meant to run the universe on your own. True humility is simply alignment with reality. It is the understanding that there is an order to life far greater than your personal preferences, fears, or timelines. When you humble yourself, you are not lowering your value, you are expanding your access. You are stepping out of the narrow corridor of the ego and into the vast intelligence that moves planets, seasons, and souls with effortless precision. The ego believes it must constantly speak, react, and assert itself in order to survive. It fears silence because silence reveals the truth, that you are not the voice in your head, you are the awareness listening to it. And awareness does not need to shout. Awareness does not need approval. Awareness does not need to be right. Awareness simply is. When you stay silent, you are not retreating from power, you are returning to it. You are allowing the deeper wisdom within you to take the lead. There is a sacred intelligence that flows through all of life, and it has never lost your address. It knows where you are, what you need, and when the next step will appear. But this intelligence cannot be accessed through force. It cannot be commanded by anxiety or coerced by fear. It responds to trust. It responds to surrender. It responds when you stop gripping life with clenched fists and begin opening your hands in faith. Faith, in its truest sense, is not blind belief. It is inner knowing. It is the quiet confidence that life is not happening to you, but through you and for you. Faith is what remains when the ego runs out of explanations. It is what carries you when the path ahead is not yet visible. And it is strengthened not by noise, but by stillness. When you focus on God, you are not turning away from the world. You are seeing it clearly for the first time. You begin to recognize that much of what you once fought against was never an enemy at all, but a teacher. The delays, the disappointments, the unanswered questions, they were not punishments. They were invitations to trust at a deeper level. Invitations to let go of the need to manage outcomes and instead align with wisdom. Staying silent does not mean suppressing your truth. It means discerning when your words are guided by love and when they are driven by fear. Silence allows you to respond rather than react. It gives you the clarity to see that not every battle requires your participation and not every opinion deserves your energy. When you are anchored in God, you no longer feel compelled to prove your worth. You know it. And that knowing is unshakable. Anxiety thrives on the illusion that you are alone in managing life. It feeds on the belief that everything depends on your effort, your vigilance, your constant mental rehearsal of worst-case scenarios. But the moment you step back and say, I trust the intelligence that created me to guide me, anxiety begins to loosen its grip. You rise above confusion, not by solving every problem, but by remembering who is truly in charge. The universe does not rush, and yet everything is accomplished. The trees do not strain to grow. The stars do not worry about alignment. There is a rhythm to existence that is inherently harmonious, and when you align with it, life begins to flow with less resistance. Trusting this flow does not mean passivity. It means inspired action, action that arises from inner clarity rather than outer pressure. When you stop forcing life, something remarkable happens. Opportunities appear without strain, answers arrive without demand. You find yourself guided toward the right conversations, the right decisions, the right moments, not because you controlled them, but because you allowed them. This is the paradox of surrender. When you release control, you gain alignment. When you let go of fear, you gain direction. Humility allows you to be taught by life instead of arguing with it. Silence allows you to hear what has been trying to reach you all along. And focus on God reminds you that you are never separate from the source that animates you. The divine is not distant or reserved for special moments. It is present in every breath, every pause, every quiet realization that you are supported in ways you cannot always see. The soul always knows. It has a memory far older than your current circumstances. It remembers wholeness even when the mind is fragmented. And when you give the soul space through silence, humility, and trust, it gently guides you back to yourself. Not the self defined by roles, achievements, or past mistakes, but the self that exists beyond all of that. The self that is enough, always has been, always will be. There are no justified resentments because resentment assumes that life has made a mistake. Forgiveness is not about condoning behavior. It is about releasing the belief that carrying pain gives you power. It does not. It drains you. When you forgive, you free yourself from the weight of the past and make room for clarity in the present. And clarity is the language of God. Living in the now is not a spiritual slogan. It is a spiritual discipline. It is the practice of meeting life as it is without overlaying it with regret or fear. The present moment is where guidance exists. It is where peace resides. It is where the divine can be felt most clearly. When you stay silent, you naturally return to now. The mind slows. The heart opens. And you remember that this moment, just as it is enough. You are a divine being having a human experience, not the other way around. And the more you identify with this truth, the less power the ego has over you. Pride dissolves not through self-criticism, but through awareness. You see that the need to be superior, to be right, to be noticed, was never about confidence. It was about forgetting your connection to God. When you remember that connection, humility becomes natural. Silence becomes comforting. Trust becomes logical. Everything changes when you begin trusting God instead of forcing life. The struggle softens. The urgency fades. You find yourself moving with life rather than against it. And in that movement, there is grace. There is ease. There's a quiet joy that does not depend on circumstances. Silence is not weakness. It is spiritual strength. It is the strength to listen, to observe, to wait without fear. Humility is not limitation, it is divine access. It opens you to guidance that cannot reach a mind crowded with ego. And faith is not blind, it is the deepest form of knowing. It is the recognition that the same intelligence that beats your heart knows exactly how to guide your life. So focus on God. Humble yourself before the mystery of existence. Stay silent long enough to hear the truth that has always lived within you. Trust the flow that has carried you this far. Let go of control and fear. Rise above anxiety and confusion. And remember, you were never meant to do this alone. You were meant to align, to listen, and to allow. When you do, everything changes, not because the world suddenly becomes perfect, but because you finally remember who you are within it. And as you remain in this softened state of awareness, something even more subtle begins to unfold. You start to notice that life has been speaking to you all along, not through dramatic signs or thunderous revelations, but through gentle nudges, quiet intuitions, and repeated invitations to return to love. The universe does not compete for your attention, it cooperates with your willingness. When you slow down enough to feel rather than think your way through existence, guidance becomes less of an event and more of a constant presence. There is a wisdom that moves beneath the surface of your daily experiences, arranging encounters, delays, and openings with a precision that the rational mind could never orchestrate. You may call it God, source, higher intelligence, or simply love, but its signature is always the same. It carries no urgency, no condemnation, no fear. It does not rush you or shame you into growth. It waits, knowing that what is real cannot be threatened and what is false does not need defending. When you release the need to announce your journey, to justify your choices, or to seek validation for your faith, your inner life becomes richer and more stable. Silence protects what is sacred. It allows your connection with God to mature without interference, like a seed growing underground, unseen but inevitable. Not everything meant to transform you needs to be explained to others. Some truths are meant to be lived quietly until they become embodied wisdom. And in this quiet embodiment, you begin to recognize a profound shift. You are no longer driven by the need to fix yourself. The endless self-improvement project gives way to self-remembrance. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start resting in the awareness nothing essential has ever been missing. From this space, healing unfolds naturally, not as a dramatic breakthrough, but as a gentle return to wholeness, moment by moment. You notice how compassion begins to replace judgment, especially toward yourself. Where you once pushed, you now allow. Where you once resisted, you now soften. This is not resignation, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that growth does not require force, only alignment. The flower does not strain to bloom, it simply turns toward the light. And so do you, when you stop wrestling with your own becoming. The more you trust this process, the less you fear uncertainty. You realize that not knowing is not a flaw in the design, it is part of the invitation. Uncertainty keeps you present. It keeps you listening. It keeps you humble enough to be guided rather than driven. The ego craves certainty because it fears disappearance. The soul welcomes mystery because it knows it is eternal. As this awareness deepens, even challenges take on a different quality. They no longer arrive as evidence of failure, but as signals for refinement. Life begins to feel less like a series of obstacles and more like a curriculum designed specifically for your awakening. Nothing is wasted, nothing is random. Every experience carries within it the potential to return you to love if you meet it without resistance. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to live from a quieter center. Your actions become simpler, more intentional. Your words carry less urgency and more truth. You discover that peace is not something you chase, but something you uncover when you stop running from yourself. In this space, joy arises without reason, gratitude flows without effort, and trust becomes your natural posture toward life. This is the strength that comes from humility. This is the clarity born of silence. This is the freedom that emerges when you focus on God rather than the noise of the world. You are not withdrawing from life, you are finally meeting it without the armor of fear. And in doing so, you allow the deepest intelligence in the universe to move through you gently, wisely, and always in the direction of love. Stay here, not as an escape, but as a homecoming. Let each breath remind you that you are held, guided, and infinitely supported. You do not need to force the next step. You only need to remain available to it. Life knows how to reach you when you are willing to be still. And in that stillness, you will find that everything you have been seeking has been patiently waiting within you all along. And from this place of inner availability, you may begin to sense something quietly astonishing, that the peace you once believed was reserved for some future moment has already arrived. It has been here beneath the striving, beneath the questions, beneath the endless effort to become something more. Peace does not enter your life when conditions improve. It reveals itself when resistance dissolves. It is not granted as a reward. It is recognized as your natural state. You start to understand that much of what you once called effort was actually fear in disguise. The need to hurry, to push, to secure outcomes before they slip away, all of it rooted in the belief that life is fragile and must be managed. But life is not fragile. It is intelligent, and when you stop interfering with that intelligence, when you stop telling the river how to flow, it carries you with a grace that feels almost miraculous, though it has always been the way. There is a quiet courage that grows inside you now. Not the courage to conquer or dominate, but the courage to trust without guarantees, to move forward without demanding proof, to rest in faith even when the path curves out of sight. This courage does not shout. It does not announce itself. It simply steadies you. It allows you to remain open where you once closed, calm where you once panicked, patient where you once grasped, and you begin to notice how life responds to this shift. Not always immediately, not always in dramatic ways, but consistently. Conversations soften, opportunities align. Even when circumstances remain challenging, your relationship to them changes. You are no longer at war with what is, you meet it with presence. And presence transforms experience more deeply than control ever could. You may still feel emotions, sadness, uncertainty, longing, but they move through you rather than defining you. You no longer cling to them as identities. You watch them arise, crest, and pass like weather across a vast sky. And you begin to recognize yourself not as the storm, but as the sky itself. Spacious, unthreatened, aware. This awareness carries with it a profound kindness toward yourself first and then outward. You stop measuring your worth by productivity or approval. You stop comparing your journey to anyone else's. Comparison fades when you realize that life is not a competition but an expression. Each soul unfolds in its own timing according to its own design. There is no need to rush what is already guided. In this gentler rhythm, gratitude becomes less of a practice and more of a perception. You notice beauty in ordinary moments. You feel reverence in simplicity. A quiet cup of tea, a deep breath, a shared smile, these become sacred not because you label them so, but because you are fully present to them, and presence reveals the holy in the ordinary. You begin to see that silence is not something you enter only in meditation or prayer. It becomes a way of moving through the world, a listening quality, a softness behind your words. Even when you speak, there is space. Even when you act, there is stillness underneath. This is not withdrawal from life. It is intimacy with it. And in this intimacy, fear loses its authority. It may still visit, but it no longer governs. You recognize it as a signal to return inward, to reconnect, to remember. Fear cannot survive sustained awareness. It dissolves when met with understanding rather than resistance. You do not fight it away, you outgrow it. As trust deepens, control loosens naturally. You stop trying to orchestrate every detail of your existence. You act when inspired, rest when guided, speak when necessary, and remain silent when wisdom calls for quiet. Life becomes less about achievement and more about alignment, less about effort and more about allowing. And perhaps the most profound realization of all begins to dawn, that you have never been separate from God. The sense of distance was created by thought, sustained by fear, and dissolved by awareness. The moment you stop searching outward for what has always lived within you, the seeking ends. And in its place, there is a gentle, abiding knowing you are guided, you are loved, and you are exactly where you need to be. So continue to walk gently. Continue to listen deeply. Continue to trust what is unfolding, even when it does not make immediate sense. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are remembering. And every moment of humility, every pause of silence, every act of trust brings you closer, not to something new, but to the truth of who you have always been. And as this remembering deepens, you begin to sense a gentle recalibration taking place within you, as though an inner compass long obscured is quietly finding true north again. You are no longer measuring your life by how loud it appears from the outside, but by how aligned it feels on the inside. The old impulses to impress, to rush, to prove, begin to lose their urgency, not because you have suppressed them, but because they no longer promise what you once believed they could deliver. You notice how the need to be seen gives way to the desire to be real. Authenticity starts to matter more than approval. Truth feels more nourishing than applause. And this shift is subtle, almost tender, yet it transforms everything. You move through conversations with less armor. You listen more than you speak. You sense when words would clarify and when silence would heal. And in this discernment, wisdom quietly takes root. Life begins to feel less like a puzzle to be solved and more like a mystery to be trusted. You stop demanding that every experience make immediate sense. You allow questions to remain open without anxiety. And in doing so, you discover that clarity often arrives not through analysis, but through patience. Understanding ripens in its own time, and when it does, it arrives whole, without strain. There is a profound relief in realizing that you do not need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. The belief that everything depends on you begins to loosen, and with it, the tension that once lived in your body softens, your breath deepens, your nervous system settles. You feel supported by something far more stable than your own effort. And this support does not make you passive, it makes you present. From this presence, inspired action arises naturally. You find yourself doing what needs to be done without the heaviness of obligation. Service replaces struggle. Contribution replaces competition. You act not to secure your worth, but to express it. And because your actions are no longer fueled by fear, they carry a different energy, calmer, clearer, more effective. You may notice that some relationships shift during this time, not through conflict, but through resonance. When you change your frequency, what no longer aligns gently falls away, and what is true finds you with ease. There is no need to force connections or cling to dynamics that have run their course. Trust that what remains is what supports your becoming. And when moments of doubt arise, as they inevitably will, you meet them differently now. You do not spiral into self-judgment or rush to escape discomfort. You pause, you breathe, you remember. Doubt becomes a doorway rather than a dead end, inviting you back into trust, back into humility, back into listening. This is how faith matures, not as certainty about outcomes, but as steadiness within uncertainty. You learn to rest in the unseen, to walk forward without needing the entire path illuminated, to trust that each step will reveal itself precisely when it is needed. And in this trust, you feel a companionship with life itself, as though you are being quietly escorted rather than left to wander alone. Gradually, the inner dialogue softens even further. The harshness fades. The criticism loses its edge. You speak to yourself with the same patience you would offer a dear friend, and this kindness becomes a powerful healing force. The body responds. The heart opens. Old wounds begin to release their grip, not because you forced them to heal, but because you finally created the conditions for healing to occur. You realize then that humility is not about thinking less of yourself, it is about thinking of yourself less often. It is about becoming so anchored in something greater that the constant self-referencing mind can finally rest. And in that rest, there is freedom. Freedom from the need to control. Freedom from the need to know. Freedom to simply be. The quiet you have cultivated now moves with you everywhere. It is present in motion as much as in stillness. It does not disappear when life becomes busy or challenging. It remains as an undercurrent, steady and reassuring. You know where to return when the world feels overwhelming. You know how to listen again. And so you continue, not with force, but with faith. Not with pride, but with humility. Not with noise, but with a deep, abiding silence that carries wisdom in every breath. You are no longer seeking alignment, you are living it. And as you do, life meets you with the same gentleness, the same intelligence, the same quiet love that has always been guiding you home. When you awaken in the morning, before the mind rushes in with its familiar inventory of worries, responsibilities, and unfinished business, there is a quiet moment available to you. It is subtle. It is easily overlooked. Yet in that moment lives a power that has shaped galaxies, breathed life into forests, and guided your heart through every chapter of your existence. This power does not shout, it whispers. And the language it speaks most fluently is gratitude. Gratitude is not a polite response to life when things go your way. It is a state of alignment with the intelligence that creates and sustains all things. It is a way of remembering who you really are before the world taught you to measure yourself by achievement, comparison, and fear. When you begin your day with gratitude, you are not trying to change reality. You are changing your relationship with reality. And that is where miracles quietly begin. As you sit with these words, allow yourself to soften. Let the breath move naturally in and out of your body. Notice that you are alive, not conceptually, not philosophically, but actually alive in this moment. Your heart is beating without your permission. Your lungs are breathing without effort. Your body knows how to exist. Your soul knows how to guide. This alone is worthy of gratitude. You do not have to earn it. You do not have to deserve it. Existence itself is a gift that has already been given. Gratitude is the decision to see life not as a series of problems to be solved, but as a field of experiences meant to awaken you. When you say, "I am grateful," you are affirming trust in the flow of life. You are declaring that you are willing to release the illusion of control and step into cooperation with something far wiser than the egoic mind. The ego says, "I will be grateful when everything works out." The soul says, "Everything works out when I am grateful." There is a profound shift that occurs when you stop postponing peace. When you no longer say, "I will be calm when this situation changes," or "I will be happy when I arrive somewhere else." Gratitude brings you home to now. And now is the only place where life is actually happening. The past is a memory, the future is a projection, but this moment is alive, responsive, and infinitely creative. As you begin your day, gently affirm within yourself that everything is working out for you. Not because you can predict the outcome, but because you trust the process. Trust does not mean you understand the path. It means you are willing to walk it without resistance. Resistance is the belief that life should be different from what it is. Gratitude dissolves resistance by reminding you that life is not happening to you, but through you. You are not here to battle the world. You are here to align with it. When you align your thoughts with appreciation, your nervous system relaxes, your perception widens, and your intuition becomes clearer. Gratitude is not passive. It is an active frequency. It reorganizes the mind. It softens the heart. It restores harmony between your inner world and the outer experience. Say to yourself, quietly or aloud, I am grateful for this day. Not because you know what it will bring, but because you trust that whatever it brings is part of your unfolding. The universe does not make mistakes. It responds to consciousness. And consciousness that is rooted in gratitude attracts experiences that reflect that inner state. Everything works out for you not because life is always comfortable, but because life is always instructive. Sometimes what works out looks like a door opening. Sometimes it looks like a door closing. The ego resists endings, but the soul understands transitions. Gratitude allows you to bless both. It frees you from the exhausting habit of labeling experiences as good or bad and invites you into a deeper wisdom where everything is recognized as purposeful. When challenges arise, gratitude does not deny them. It contextualizes them. It reminds you that you have survived every difficult moment you have ever faced. It reminds you that strength is not something you acquire in the absence of struggle, but something you discover in the presence of it. Gratitude says, I trust myself to meet this moment. And that trust is transformative. There is an intelligence moving through you that knows exactly how to heal, how to grow, and how to evolve. When you are grateful, you step out of the way of that intelligence. You stop micromanaging life. You stop insisting that things unfold according to your limited understanding. You allow yourself to be guided. And guidance does not always come as clarity. Often it comes as a feeling of peace in uncertainty. Everything works out for you when you stop arguing with reality. When you release the need to be right, to be validated, to be ahead. Gratitude gently loosens the grip of the ego and reminds you that your worth is not negotiable. You were enough before you accomplished anything. You will be enough regardless of how today unfolds. Gratitude anchors you in that truth. As you move through your morning, notice how gratitude shifts your energy. It changes the way you listen. It changes the way you speak. It changes the way you move through space. People can feel it. Situation will respond to it. Not because you are trying to manipulate outcomes, but because you are aligned with the same creative force that animates all life. Gratitude is a form of prayer without words. It is an acknowledgement that you are supported, even when you cannot see how. It is the recognition that you are not alone in your journey, that there is an unseen order beneath the surface of appearances. When you trust this order, fear loses its authority, anxiety dissolves, and a quiet confidence takes its place. Everything works out for you when you remember that you are not your thoughts. Thoughts are habits of attention, not statements of truth. Gratitude gently redirects attention away from scarcity and toward abundance. Not the abundance of possessions, but the abundance of presence, breath, awareness, and possibility. From that space, inspired action naturally arises. You do not have to force positivity. Forced positivity is just another form of resistance. Gratitude is different. It is honest. It includes the full spectrum of experience and chooses appreciation anyway. It says, even this has something to teach me. And in that openness, healing occurs. When you begin your day with gratitude, you are setting an intention for how you wish to experience life. You are choosing to see beyond appearances and trust the deeper movement of things. You are affirming that your inner state matters more than external circumstances. And that affirmation is powerful. Everything works out for you because you are part of something infinitely intelligent and benevolent. You are not separate from it. You are an expression of it. Gratitude is simply the act of remembering that truth, and remembrance is the beginning of awakening. So as this day unfolds, carry gratitude with you, not as a technique, but as a way of being. Let it guide your thoughts, soften your reactions, and open your heart. When you forget, gently return. There is no failure here, only practice. Only remembering again and again. Everything works out for you because you are willing to trust life rather than fight it. Because you are willing to meet each moment with appreciation rather than fear. Because you are aligned with your higher self, which has never doubted your worth or your path. Begin again, here and now, with gratitude, and watch how life responds. Not with spectacle, but with a quiet unfolding that feels unmistakably right. Stay with this awareness as the day continues to breathe itself through you, because gratitude is not something you finish practicing once the morning ends. It is a way of walking through time without being owned by it. Each moment offers you a choice to contract into judgment or to expand into appreciation. And every time you choose appreciation, even softly, even imperfectly, you step back into alignment with the truth of who you are. Notice how life begins to feel less like a series of demands and more like a dialogue. Gratitude turns existence into a conversation rather than a confrontation. You are no longer pushing against what is. You are listening for what is being asked of you. This listening is subtle. It does not always arrive as words or answers. Sometimes it arrives as a calm knowing, a gentle nudge, or a quiet sense that you are exactly where you need to be. When the mind tries to pull you back into old stories of lack or fear, greet those thoughts with kindness rather than resistance. Resistance gives them strength. Gratitude dissolves them. You can simply say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I choose trust." And in that choice, the nervous system settles, the body relaxes, and the soul resumes its natural leadership. Everything works out for you when you stop demanding that life prove itself before you feel safe. Gratitude is the willingness to feel safe now without guarantees. It is a declaration that peace is an inside job, and from that peace, clarity emerges. Decisions become simpler. You begin to sense what aligns and what does not through force, but through feeling. There is a rhythm to life that you cannot hear when you are rushing or resisting. Gratitude slows you down just enough to feel that rhythm again. It reminds you that growth does not happen through pressure, but through allowance. Seeds do not strain to become trees. They trust the process of light, soil, and time. You are no different. When you trust, you grow naturally. As situations unfold today, some may meet your preferences and some may challenge them. Gratitude does not mean you pretend everything is pleasant. It means you remain present and open regardless. Presence is where your power lives, not in controlling outcomes, but in responding consciously. Gratitude keeps you rooted in that presence. Everything works out for you because every experience is refining your awareness. Even moments of discomfort are shaping you, teaching you where you still hold resistance and where you are ready to release. Gratitude turns lessons into blessings, not by changing their form, but by changing your relationship to them. You may notice that when you are grateful, time feels different. The urgency softens. The need to rush dissolves. You become less concerned with getting somewhere else and more interested in fully inhabiting where you are. This is not complacency. This is mastery. It is the understanding that fulfillment is not found in the future, but revealed in the depth of your attention now. Gratitude also reconnects you to others in a profound way. When you are appreciative, you stop seeing people as obstacles or tools for your validation. You begin to see them as fellow travelers, each carrying their own fears, hopes, and lessons. Compassion naturally arises, and compassion lightens the heart. Everything works out for you when you remember that love is the underlying force of the universe. Fear is loud, but it is not powerful. Love is quiet, steady, and infinitely creative. Gratitude aligns you with love because it acknowledges the good that already exists, even when it is not obvious. You are not here to perfect yourself. You are here to remember yourself. Gratitude is remembrance. It brings you back to the awareness that you are already whole, already guided, already supported. From that knowing, effort becomes inspired rather than forced. As the day moves forward, let gratitude be the lens through which you interpret experience. Not rigidly, not dogmatically, but gently. When something unexpected happens, pause and ask, what is this showing me? That question opens space. And in space, wisdom enters. Everything works out for you because you are willing to surrender the illusion that you must control everything to be okay. Surrender is not giving up. It is giving over. It is trusting that life knows what it is doing, even when the mind does not. Carry this with you now. Let gratitude become the background music of your day, subtle but steady. You will find that when gratitude is present, fear cannot dominate, resentment cannot take root, and joy no longer feels conditional. And when the day begins to close, you may realize that nothing extraordinary needed to happen for it to feel meaningful. The meaning was always there, waiting for your attention. Gratitude revealed it. Everything works out for you because you are aligned with the flow of life itself. And life, when met with trust and appreciation, always knows how to take care of its own. There is a deeper layer to gratitude that reveals itself when you stop using it as a response and begin living it as an identity. At this level, gratitude is no longer something you do when circumstances are favorable. It becomes the inner climate from which you experience everything. You begin to sense that life is not testing you, punishing you, or withholding from you. Life is shaping you. And when you understand this, the need to struggle softens into a willingness to participate. You start to feel that gentle intelligence moving through even the smallest details of your day. A pause in conversation that allows insight to rise. A delay that protects you from what you cannot yet see. An unexpected meeting that shifts your perspective just enough to redirect your path. Gratitude sharpens your awareness of these subtleties. It teaches you to notice without grasping, to receive without demanding, to trust without knowing how. The mind often wants certainty, but the soul thrives on faith. Not blind belief, but a quiet confidence that you are being carried by something larger than your plans. Gratitude nourishes this confidence. It loosens the grip of the ego, which believes safety comes from control, and gently reminds you that real security comes from alignment. When you are aligned, you do not need guarantees. You feel supported from within. As you move through life in this state, you may notice that your reactions begin to change. Situations that once triggered frustration or fear no longer have the same hold on you. Not because you have numbed yourself, but because you have expanded beyond them. Gratitude creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, you rediscover your freedom. Freedom does not mean the absence of challenges. It means the absence of inner resistance. When you are grateful, you meet life openly rather than defensively. You stop asking, why is this happening to me, and begin asking, how is this serving my awakening? That question alone transforms the quality of your experience. It turns obstacles into invitations and uncertainty into exploration. There is a quiet joy that emerges when you stop measuring your life against expectations and start honoring it as it is. This joy is not excitement. It is not dependent on external success. It is a deep sense of rightness that comes from being present with yourself without judgment. Gratitude anchors you in that presence. It says, this moment is enough. And in doing so, it frees you from the endless pursuit of more. You may also begin to notice how gratitude reshapes your sense of time. The future no longer feels like something you must race toward, and the past loses its power to define you. You recognize that who you are is not a product of what happened before, but an expression of what you choose now. Gratitude brings you back to this choice again and again. Everything works out for you because you are learning to trust the unfolding rather than forcing the outcome. When you stop pushing against life, life begins to move with you. Doors open not because you demand them to, but because you are ready to walk through. Paths reveal themselves, not because you planned every step, but because you listened. Gratitude also deepens your connection to yourself. You begin to appreciate your own resilience, your sensitivity, your capacity to grow. You stop criticizing yourself for not being further along and start honoring how far you have already come. This self-appreciation is not arrogance. It is respect for the journey your soul has chosen. As this respect grows, so does patience. You no longer rush your healing or compare your progress to others. You understand that every soul moves at its own pace, guided by its own wisdom. Gratitude allows you to rest in that understanding without anxiety. There is a quiet power in trusting that you are exactly where you need to be. Not because everything is perfect, but because this moment contains what you need for the next step. Gratitude reveals that truth not as an idea, but as a felt experience. You sense it in the body. You feel it in the breath. You recognize it as a calm steadiness beneath the surface of change. And from this steadiness, life continues to unfold in ways that feel increasingly meaningful. Not always easier, but clearer. Not always predictable, but purposeful. Gratitude does not promise comfort. It offers clarity, and clarity is what allows you to move forward without fear. So remain open, remain receptive. Let gratitude continue to guide you, not as a practice you must remember to do, but as a natural expression of who you are becoming. With each moment of appreciation, you align more deeply with your higher self. And from that alignment, life responds with a quiet assurance that everything in its own time and way is indeed working out for you. There comes a moment, often unnoticed, when gratitude stops feeling like something you are cultivating and begins to feel like something that is carrying you. You realize you are no longer reminding yourself to trust life. You are resting inside that trust. The effort drops away. The inner dialogue softens. And in that softening, a deeper intelligence takes the lead. This is the intelligence that has been guiding you long before you had language for it, long before you learned to doubt yourself, long before you mistook anxiety for preparation and control for safety. In this space, you begin to sense that your life is not a problem to be fixed, but a mystery to be lived. Gratitude keeps you intimate with that mystery. It invites you to stay curious rather than fearful, receptive rather than rigid. You no longer rush to label experiences or rush past moments of stillness. You allow life to reveal itself at its own pace, trusting that nothing meaningful is ever truly delayed. You may notice that when gratitude becomes your inner posture, the world seems to respond differently, not because circumstances instantly change, but because your perception does. What once felt like chaos now feels like movement. What once felt like loss now feels like redirection. What once felt like uncertainty now carries a quiet sense of possibility. Gratitude does not blind you to difficulty. It gives you the eyes to see beyond it. There is a profound humility that arises here, and with it, a deep peace. You stop insisting that life conform to your preferences, and instead, you begin to cooperate with its wisdom. This cooperation is not passive. It is alive, attentive, and responsive. You take action when action is called for, and you wait when waiting is required. Gratitude sharpens your discernment. It helps you feel the difference between effort that is aligned and effort that is driven by fear. As this discernment grows, so does your compassion for yourself. You stop punishing yourself for moments of doubt or hesitation. You understand that awakening is not a straight line, but a gentle spiral of remembering. Gratitude allows you to meet yourself exactly where you are, without shame, without impatience. And in that meeting, healing unfolds naturally. You begin to experience a subtle but powerful shift in identity. You no longer see yourself primarily as a personality navigating external events. You begin to recognize yourself as awareness itself, witnessing experience without being consumed by it. Gratitude anchors you in this awareness. It reminds you that you are not defined by what passes through you, but by the consciousness that observes it all. From this vantage point, life feels less heavy. You are still engaged, still caring, still participating fully, but without the exhausting need to control every outcome. You trust that what is meant for you cannot miss you, and what misses you was never meant to stay. This trust does not make you passive. It makes you peaceful. Gratitude also refines your sense of purpose. You stop searching for meaning as something outside of you, something to be achieved later, somewhere else. You begin to feel that meaning is generated moment by moment through presence, kindness, and awareness. You realize that how you show up matters more than where you end up. Gratitude keeps you anchored in this truth. As the emotional arc of your day continues to unfold, you may find yourself more willing to pause, to breathe, to feel. You are less inclined to numb discomfort or rush past vulnerability. Gratitude gives you the courage to stay open, and openness is where transformation occurs. Not through force, but through allowing. There is a quiet elegance to living this way. You are no longer fighting the current of life, nor are you floating aimlessly. You are moving with intention, guided by an inner compass that grows clearer with each moment of appreciation. Gratitude fine-tunes that compass. It keeps you oriented toward what is real, what is enduring, what is true. And so the rhythm continues, breath by breath, moment by moment. Gratitude weaving itself into your thoughts, your movements, your choices. You may not always notice it, but you will feel its effects. A steadier heart, a calmer mind, a deeper trust in the unfolding of your life. Everything works out for you not as a dramatic declaration, but as a lived experience. A quiet knowing that no matter what arises, you are equipped to meet it. That you are supported in ways both seen and unseen. That you are part of a larger harmony that does not rush, does not panic, and does not fail. Stay here. Stay present. Let gratitude continue to shape you from the inside out. And as it does, you will find that life, in all its complexity and beauty, meets you with the same openness you offer it. As this inner alignment deepens, you may begin to sense that gratitude is quietly dissolving old tensions you once carried without question. Not by revisiting them or analyzing them, but by gently loosening their grip, you realize that much of what once felt heavy was never meant to be carried indefinitely. It was meant to be noticed, learned from, and released. Gratitude creates the inner conditions for that release. It does not force forgetting, it invites freedom. You begin to experience a softer relationship with uncertainty. What once felt like a threat now feels like an open field. You no longer demand to know how everything will unfold in order to move forward. You move because movement itself feels natural again. Gratitude restores this naturalness. It brings you back into rhythm with life, where intuition replaces anxiety and trust replaces tension. In this rhythm, you may notice that your desires begin to change. The need to prove, to compete, to accumulate begins to lose its urgency. Not because you stop caring, but because you start caring more deeply about what actually nourishes you. Gratitude clarifies values. It helps you recognize the difference between what satisfies the ego and what sustains the soul. There is also a growing awareness that you are not separate from the world around you. The same intelligence that moves your breath moves the wind through trees and the tides across oceans. Gratitude reconnects you to this unity, not as an abstract idea, but as a lived experience. You feel less alone, even in silence. You sense companionship and stillness. From this place, forgiveness begins to emerge naturally, not as a moral obligation, but as a practical decision to release yourself from the weight of resentment. Gratitude reveals how much energy has been tied up in holding onto old narratives. When you let them go, that energy becomes available for creativity, for presence, for joy. Forgiveness becomes less about others and more about honoring your own peace. You may also find that gratitude softens your relationship with effort. You still act, still plan, still participate fully in life, but without the constant pressure to make things happen. Action becomes an expression of alignment rather than urgency. You do what feels right, when it feels right, and trust that timing is not something you must manage. Gratitude keeps you attuned to this timing. As this way of being continues to unfold, a quiet confidence settles in, not the loud confidence of certainty, but the steady confidence of trust. You begin to sense that no experience is wasted, no moment is meaningless, even pauses have purpose. Even silence has something to say. Gratitude teaches you to listen. You also become more present to beauty in ordinary moments, the way light moves across a room, the sound of your own breath, the simplicity of being here, now. Gratitude sharpens perception. It reveals richness where the mind once saw only routine. Life feels fuller, not because more is happening, but because you are more available to what is happening. And in this availability, you begin to feel a deeper sense of belonging, not belonging to a group or an idea, but belonging to life itself. You are no longer standing apart, observing from a distance. You are participating fully with an open heart and a grounded presence. Gratitude anchors you in this participation. Everything continues to work out for you, not as a promise of ease, but as a reassurance of meaning. You trust that whatever arises is contributing to your growth, your understanding, your awakening. You no longer measure your life by outcomes alone, but by the quality of awareness you bring to each moment. So you keep moving forward, not with haste, but with intention, not with fear, but with openness. Gratitude becomes less something you remember to practice and more something that lives quietly beneath your thoughts, guiding you without effort. And as the flow continues, you sense that this way of being is not temporary. It is not a phase or a mood. It is a remembering, a return to a natural state of trust, presence, and appreciation that has always been available to you. Remain here in this unfolding. Let the rhythm carry you. Let gratitude continue to reveal itself in deeper and subtler ways. And trust that as you stay aligned with this inner knowing, life will continue to meet you with the same gentle intelligence that has been guiding you all along.